Okay, welcome back to Daily Driven Alpha. Now, this isn't to do with the project car, although the speedo that you can see that's pulled apart on the right hand side is out of the project car. But the issue that I had is actually with my daily driver, my step nose. And there's not a lot out there at the moment that I've seen around the internals of these speedometers, and specifically the odometers. I had this the instruments refurbished about 12 months ago, and they've all been running really well. Got to 20,000 miles on the way back from a drive on the weekend, and the odometer got to 19,999 and stopped working. And so I pulled the speedometer out of the car, and I thought I'd get the project car's speedometer out as well, pull it apart, have a look at it, and then compare the two. Now what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you. I've already pulled this one apart, but what I'll do is I'll just show you what happens and the components as you do pull them apart. You've got to be very careful with them, they're quite fragile. So you've got a chrome ring out here, then you've also got this the plastic inner piece, you've got a glass face, and you've also got some inner pieces. Now when you approach these, what you need to do is you need to, without bending these tabs too much, you need to almost just pry them away from the edge and pull them away so you get 3 off, and then you can move the ring off. If you try and bend these open too much, you may end up snapping them, and then that's going to be a problem for you to try and get them back on. I can't, I've never seen any of these chrome rings available for refurbishing your instruments. So that's the first thing you do. So once you've done that, be very careful as you pry it off, because as you do so you're going to get this outer ring coming off, and you can see straight away there's another plastic component that sits in there with a seal, right? So those pieces there, be very careful with them, they're quite fragile. And then what you've left with is the inner glass piece, and you'll see that'll move out as it's quite thick, right? Quite a thick piece of glass. Right, let's put that down to one side. And then what we have is you have an inner aluminium sort of piece that also needs to come out, and that's what the glass actually sits on. Right. Very, very, very thin, so be very careful with these. Even though this has been restored, there's a little bit of damage on there. So that now leaves you with the speedometer. The needle is exposed, be very careful. There's another piece of glass there, and you don't actually have to do anything with these apart from get it over and start to take, well, the screw's already fallen out as you can see because I've loosened it previously. But then what you want to do is get these screws, undo these carefully, and as soon as you start to do that, well, depending on if the instrument's been pulled apart before, you'll see, whoops, that's fallen straight through. Right. Now there is the actual odometer reset, which sits through this hole here. You actually just unscrew that first, pull that out so that there's no resistance. Once you've done that, you should be able to lift this off like that. And I hope I haven't damaged the needle. No, sitting on a nice soft surface. Now I couldn't work out why there was so much resistance and why the odometer wasn't turning over at 20,000 miles. But when I compared these two instruments, and I was looking for obvious signs, you'll notice that on this one here, you'll see there's a brass plug here that's connected to a shaft that runs all the way through here, and it drives a worm gear on this side here that runs the numbers. So I was looking at the one in my daily driver, and you can see that brass plug has been pushed out. There's obviously been some resistance, and one of the things I noticed that when I was looking at it, I could freely move this worm gear by hand, which you shouldn't be able to do. Now you'll see the input there from the shaft that comes all the way through is depressed. That shouldn't be like that. That should be flush. So as soon as I took this and pushed that into the body and pressed it flush, which it shouldn't be moving, you can see the shaft came out here, and then I couldn't move this, and now the odometer is back in gear again. So it looked like the drive shaft here against this worm gear here, the shaft here, had come loose. It wasn't engaging, and that's the reason. And I think what it is it was just the resistance of tumbling over all of the numbers, because it had been working fine from about 11,000 miles, etc. It had been working fine, and then just when it got to that 20,000 mile number, it seemed to be too much resistance there, and that pushed out. Now what I did notice is that after the instrument refurbishment, you can see there's some damage there, and it looks like the guys have tried to punch the aluminium body in against the brass fitting there to hold it in place, and that has not worked. So I'm going to have a look at how I can secure that and make sure that that doesn't move with vibration. But having done that now and tested it and just applied a little bit of lithium grease to the worm gears, make sure they're running okay, that should all be fine and dandy now. So hopefully I've solved the problem that I had about the odometer not turning over. But that gives you just a little bit of an insight into the inner workings of the actual speedos themselves. You can see one area there where your light bulb fitting goes through for your lighting, and then you can see also here where your light bulbs come through, and you've got some coloured glass there to give you your different colours. So not too hard to have a look at these. You can do them yourselves, you've just got to be really careful with it. But if you do have any real issues with the instrumentation not working, or some significant damage in here, take it to an instrument repair place and get them to have a look at it. Often these haven't been maintained for 40 odd years or whatever, so they haven't been greased or lubricated, and we're bound to have issues. But there you go, there's something of a little bit different and maybe a little bit of interest for you on Daily Driven Alpha. Hope you enjoyed it.